In the mist-covered forests of Washington state, along quiet highways and the winding stretches of the Green River, a shadow moved silently through the 1980s. It blended into everyday life, unnoticed, unchallenged, and unimaginable. This shadow belonged to a man the world would later know as Gary Ridgway, the Green River Killer, one of the most prolific serial murderers in American history. To understand how he hid for so long, we must go back to where his story began. Gary Ridgway grew up in a troubled home outside Seattle. His childhood was filled with tension, strict discipline, instability, and emotional turmoil. Classmates described him as quiet and socially awkward. He struggled academically, and early on he developed deep insecurities that would follow him into adulthood. But when Ridgway reached his 30s, he looked like anything but a predator. He had a steady job painting trucks. He married, divorced, remarried. He attended church. He paid his bills. To neighbors, he was polite, ordinary, forgettable. And that was his greatest weapon. In the summer of 1982, the quiet communities south of Seattle were shaken when the body of a young woman was discovered near the Green River. Days later, another, and another. Soon, detectives realized they were facing something far more frightening than isolated tragedies: a pattern. Women were last seen near Pacific Highway South, an area known for transient communities and vulnerable individuals. Many were runaways or sex workers, women whose disappearances often went unreported for weeks. The killer chose victims who lived on the margins, people the public rarely noticed, and that made the investigation even more difficult. As bodies were discovered near riverbanks and forest clearings, the media named the unknown predator the Green River Killer. Local police quickly launched a massive response. The Green River Task Force was formed, one of the largest criminal investigations in U.S. history. Detectives worked around the clock, building timelines, interviewing suspects, and collecting evidence. But the killer left almost nothing behind. No fingerprints, no witnesses, no clear pattern the task force could rely on. Ridgway, meanwhile, continued living his quiet, steady life. He clocked in at work every morning. He drove the same pickup truck. He mowed his lawn. He even appeared helpful at times, answering questions when detectives interviewed him, maintaining a calm, cooperative presence that made him seem harmless. Behind that calm exterior, he was hiding the truth. Throughout the mid-1980s, the task force followed thousands of leads. They interviewed Ridgway multiple times, but never had enough evidence to hold him. Their frustration grew. Detectives knew the killer was methodical, calculating, always one step ahead. But the science of the time simply couldn't give them the proof they needed. And then, the killings slowed. Eventually, they stopped. The task force continued searching for answers, but without new evidence, the investigation faded. For years, the mystery of the Green River Killer hovered like a dark cloud over Washington state, unsolved, unresolved, almost unreal. But time wasn't on Ridgway's side. It was on science's. In the late 1990s and early 2000s, DNA analysis underwent a revolution. Techniques that didn't exist 2 decades earlier now made it possible to examine old evidence with a level of precision detectives had only dreamed of. Items from the original case, biological samples, clothing fibers, preserved materials, were carefully retested. And for the first time, technology revealed what investigators had been searching for all those years: a match. In 2001, the evidence pointed directly to Gary Ridgway, a man they'd once suspected but could never prove guilty. He was arrested outside the truck painting company where he'd worked for nearly 30 years. The quiet, ordinary man was suddenly confronted with undeniable forensic proof. Faced with overwhelming evidence, Ridgway eventually confessed to many of the killings, describing his actions with a level of detail only the true perpetrator could know. His cooperation shocked investigators, but it also helped bring answers to families who had waited decades for the truth. Gary Ridgway was ultimately convicted of dozens of murders, though investigators believe the true number may be even higher. His case reshaped the way law enforcement uses DNA, sparked nationwide conversations about missing persons, and exposed the vulnerabilities of those living on society's edges. Today, Ridgway stands as one of the most notorious serial killers in American history, not because he was powerful or brilliant, but because he hid in plain sight. He was the man next door, the coworker you overlooked, the ordinary face in the supermarket aisle. And that is what makes his story so haunting. The Green River Killer reminds us that danger doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes, it whispers, quietly.